Hi, and welcome to Affected, a podcast from Meet. For those of you who don't know Meet, we are a global life sciences talent provider. We've been connecting the industry for over a decade, and now we want to share some of our insights and experiences with you. We'll be hosting monthly episodes, sharing thoughts from our leaders and industry professionals about job hunting and hiring in life sciences, as well as giving our network a platform to share their own experiences of building successful careers in an industry that affects us all.
Hey guys, and welcome to episode 7 of the Affected podcast. Today I am joined by 3 outstanding human beings. We've got the star of Meet's very own London introduction video, who has the best line in it. I think you say something along the lines of, if you want to make it in London, you just got to have a little bit about you.
Yeah, I did actually. Yeah, I was like, yeah, you just got to graph.
It's got to graph. It's got to be that. It's got to be about it. You know what I mean? I'm joined by the Kash money, Kashif Malik, who is probably the most stylish human being in the Meet offices. I would say, and this is like, you know, not to blow my own trumpet here.
Top 3 of best dressed in the awards, but I'll
Did you not make top 3?
Take it on a podcast.
I forgot who won it. No, it was me. It was me. I won best dressed. I'm just gonna move this mic down a little bit. And always a pleasure to be joined by my partner in crime, day one bestie, Emily Davis, who actually wrote the blog around which this episode was kind of based. So as we leave 2023 in the rear view mirror, the year itself was like a bit of a roller coaster, some high peaks and some low troughs, which is, I think, indicative of recruitment as a whole and life sciences as well, right? A lot of things happened that sort of played a bit of a part in sort of how things panned out for us. So inflation was a huge thing, which really put like a strain on investment and hiring. So obviously we saw a few of our clients were a little bit slower to pull the trigger on new hires. As well as that, new tech was a big thing in 2023, and it's, as we'll talk about a bit later, it widened an already relatively wide skill gap within our industries. So I'll pass it over to you guys in your markets, and Em's chiming in with your insights here as you see fit, but do you feel, or have you seen within your markets, that there is somewhat of a skill gap in your sectors?
Yeah, I think with my market, obviously it being in medcoms, it was already a small industry as it is. There are large agencies, there's those independents, but if you're comparing to other industries in the life sciences, it is very small and very compact. So it's always been one of those more of a skill short market, you know, especially where it is that agency focus as well. It's the agencies wanting them to have experience within the agencies already. So, you know, coming from different sectors or even coming from in-house to agency, it's a lot different. It's a lot more fast-paced. So there is that sort of like shortage already. It seems like it has sort of like even reduced now. It's a lot more expectations from agencies with obviously the amount of work they're doing and, you know, who they're expecting to get involved in that.
And that feels pretty indicative of life sciences as a whole right now. We asked in 2023 over 400 decision makers in one of our biggest markets, being East Coast Pharma, what their biggest challenge was in finding new talent, and over 90% of them did say that it was like a talent shortage or a skill shortage. Do you have any insights in that, in the things that you're seeing?
Yeah, so for me, I'm working obviously within the commercial markets. What I'm finding is our clients that are looking for these particular candidates, they want them to be experienced in many different industries, many different markets. So for example, you know, they want these guys to be able to build strategies, not just within the UK to launch new products, but then also in the Nordics or Netherlands and vice versa. So for someone to have that exposure to those different markets, they need to be in this industry for a long period of time to be able to have those opportunities to be able to learn those different processes to get products to be approved and ultimately to achieve reimbursement. So yeah, definitely what I'm finding is that a lot of the clients are having to either rely on, you know, outsourcing staff with those particular skill sets or going to, you know, agencies that say that they've got the staff members that have that talent, but then those agencies are coming to us to find that talent for them.
I think one thing that we're competing with more than ever, and I think you found this out when you wrote the blog, is life sciences is now competing with sort of tech when it comes to skills that cross over the two industries. How do you feel that that's going to sort of like play out this year?
Well, I think there's a lot of like transferable skills, obviously, between tech and life sciences, but I suppose for people working in it, it's what their passions are, because they're totally different industries. But I also think, especially with like AI and machine learning, is loads of processes are going to then become like automated, which then candidates will probably need to like develop their skills. But because like certain processes will be automated, they'll have like more time to be productive, if that makes sense. And also like say in like clinical development, like shorten the time to like find drug candidates, so then they can like work on getting the trial set up and everything else that goes into the next stage, rather than the like years it can take to find like the candidates to begin with.
I think that's the thing with life sciences that you touched on briefly there, is sort of this is an industry you get into because you have a passion for the things you're working about, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that our clients heavily have to lean into when we're talking about those cross collaborative skills, is like really lean on the fact that if someone wants to work in life sciences, it's because they care, because they're really interested in the drugs that we're making, or the you know the medical technologies that we're building. Yeah,
and I think that's like a key thing as well of when employers are looking at CVs and stuff, because of the skills gap. If you have a CV in front of you and they tick, say like 6 out of 8 skills that you're looking for, but once you interview them, if they've really got that like drive and passion to want to expand their skill set, and you've got people who have the ability to help them like develop in that sense, I think that's a lot more valuable than hiring someone who on paper has all the skills but would rather be in a different industry and doesn't have that same drive of like why people want to be in life sciences.
I feel like Emily could have been a recruiter in another life. Like
I only know the life sciences stuff.
We touched on earlier how I think this is something that we like whoever's watching this can relate to, is the fact that inflation hit us pretty hard last year. The price of everything went up, like everything. I think because of that, a lot of our clients, a lot of life sciences companies were very sort of hesitant to pull the trigger on big hires last year, which meant that their time to hire was much greater than it ever was. I think we did a piece on it, and it was 60 days, the average time to hire in the life sciences market.
Yeah.
60% of job seekers say that they lose interest in a position if they feel like that process is going to take an incredibly long time. So I just want to hear from you guys. How do you feel like your time to hire so far in this sort of like first month and a bit has looked in that regard?
I think from what I've seen so far, I mean, there definitely has been a change. It has, definitely gotten longer. There was a time where even with, my market, they do tasks, so you get a week to complete the task as well. It's a 2-stage interview. So normally it would take, dependent on the person's time, but it would take maybe 2.5, 3 weeks to be able to, from when I've first spoken to an offer. It's definitely increased from that. Now I'm looking at sort of like, in my market, it's more sort of 4 to 6 weeks, I'd say, and 4 at the minimum. So when, you're getting those, sort of, the whole process is finished. I think at the moment, the candidates, it depends on what else is in what they're doing. Obviously there's a lot of pressure if they are in other interview stages, they're not going to wait. So it's definitely getting that speed up, hopefully, but we are finding that candidates are sort of like, unless they're really dedicated to that one role and want that specific agency, they're happy to wait. But other than that, it's definitely sort of like it makes it a lot harder, and I understand why they wouldn't want to wait that long for a job if there's other opportunities there as well.
For sure. Kash, what would you say to sort of someone who's a life sciences business who are looking for a candidate that have like a pretty drawn out time to hire, because you're working with candidates every day. There must be situations where you could feel like the pressure from your candidates to sort of, hey, let's get this over the line. So what would you say to a life sciences business to sort of like streamline that process a little?
I think at the end of the day, we can all relate. We've all been, in the job market ourselves, and, from our own experiences, if something gets really dragged out, we lose confidence in that opportunity and we're going to look elsewhere. So in terms of, we have to be able to communicate that to the clients and create a sense of urgency for them to be able to act quickly, because there's a shortage of skill sets. For example, HTA consultants in the Netherlands or Nordics, they have very high in demand skill sets. So the moment that they come into the marketplace, they're not going to be around for long. So if the client's process is drawn out, they don't know what the budgets are, so on and so forth, we have to make them aware that as and when you get the budgets approved, this person or these types of skill sets are not going to be available. So by creating that sense of urgency, where we in a way hold the client's hand and allow them to speed up their processes in a way for us to be able to really drive efficiencies to get these candidates across the board.
And that's it, isn't it? It's sort of, we previously talked about that skills shortage on the market, and you don't want to lose some of these life sciences professionals because they are so few and far between, especially that that top upper echelon of talent. So you don't want to leave them waiting. If we can get them through the door, make that process really streamlined, as painless as possible, it's just going to be easier for you to entice them into your company. You obviously wrote that article. It was 60 days feels like a lifetime.
I think especially when you're like interviewing and things, I think as well, from a candidate perspective, and I'm just speaking from like personal experience here, it's like if something's taken that long, you just automatically assume they've gone with someone else and you haven't got it, and so you just move your attention elsewhere. But I do also think it is key to point out that if your process is too short, that's also kind of not great because of just the optics of that as well.
Yeah.
So I think especially with like top talent being really hard to get hold of, it's like a real balancing act of getting the right time frame.
Yeah.
But I think like the key to it is looking at like industry benchmarks specifically for each department and things, and then just kind of analyse like each step and whatever, but definitely like having you guys on hand, like you guys know everything and have all the contacts.
You live and breathe it, right?
I think that's like maybe the most helpful way to get there and understand how to streamline those processes to the right point.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Like, you might be so focused on, completing the task at hand, getting a drug to market, that you're just not aware of these things. So, like, ask the question. If you're working with a talent provider, I'm sure the person you're working with is an expert in the market that they're working in. Just ask the question. Like, you could ask these guys, and they'll tell you straight up what they think the best process is for you. And I think that's the most important thing. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Kash. Not Kash. Let's talk about Kash. Salary growth is something that we've seen happen sort of exponentially over the past few years. Even slowing down last year, it's still a growing thing. On average, a life science professional will earn $142,885. It's a lot of money. And that's growing. It's all, as inflation goes up and up and up, so will that salary. And like I'm saying, there being a skills shortage on the market, it means that our life sciences professionals, can demand those kinds of wages. I'm sure this is an issue that you guys deal with an awful lot, with trying to manage candidate expectations or even client expectations on salary. Do you foresee that growth of salaries continuing to rise, and if so, sort of how would you help deal with that from a client's perspective?
It's a good question. I think in terms of the demand in the marketplace, I'll talk about the UK for example. So from the beginning of this year, there was a new voluntary scheme that came into place, which life science businesses are now incentivized to bring new products to the market. So there's going to be a lot more businesses moving into this region to be able to launch products. But part of that voluntary scheme is really driven towards the top 20 pharmaceutical businesses. So with these businesses, of course, that now their hiring demands are going to increase because they're going to need certain skill sets. So I personally believe that, salaries, for them to be able to compete with other businesses, salaries are definitely going to be, well, they're just going to have to increase, because we're living in a time now where people can work hybrid, remote. So the candidate that's based here in the UK doesn't necessarily have to work for a UK company anymore. They can work for a European company and get paid outside the IR35 and retain more of their income, instead of, having to pay taxes here or pay PAYE consultants. So there's many different challenges within navigating that piece. But I think, to answer your question, over the next 5 years with this new scheme, demand is going to be increasing within the marketplace over all different verticals within the life science and pharmaceutical businesses. And with demand growing, there's going to be even more of a shortage of staff, because it's a client-led market now. So clients are going to have to compete with other clients. And if, one client's charging X, the other person has to pay Y to be able to either headhunt someone out of their current business and pull them over, or price the other company out of the market.
Are there so when I held this podcast over in New York, something that was brought up to me that I found very interesting was a lot of US-based pharmaceutical companies offer equity in the company as sort of like a sweetener if the salary expectations can't be met. Have you ever come across anything like that?
Yes. So mainly for permanent placements, there'll be an element of equity, bonuses, then they'll have all the other benefits like, company car and vice versa. So when, for example, when we're talking about very high level skilled candidates, these guys naturally transition into consulting roles because they can charge more. But when they're putting together their rate, they take into account not just the salary that they were on and the equity and the bonuses, but they also price up the cost of private medical health insurance, company cars, all of these other bits and pieces, and they allow the whole package to dictate their day or hourly rate within the market. So yes, companies are offering equity now to seem a little bit more competitive. But from my perspective, correct me if I say this wrong, but I believe that the candidates will only receive that equity if they're with that business for a long time, and when that business goes through an exit, and then they can acquire what their shares are. I think that's how it works. But if they leave before the company's been sold or invested in, then they don't get anything.
Yeah, it's quite common within sort of like the West Coast startup biotech market, where obviously bringing a new product to market, and the idea is then to sort of sell and recoup that cost. Are you seeing the same sort of thing, Roche?
Where I recruit into the agencies, so they're the companies which, the big pharma will hire them to do, the advertising, the PR, medical education. It's slightly different. I mean, if you were to compare it to 2 years ago, salaries were insane in the market. There was a lot of people, a lot of companies, I would say, given too high a salary for candidates. To me, it seems to have flattened out quite a bit. I'm finding a lot of agencies are now sticking very tight with bandings. Still very good in terms of the salaries, and they have, they are doing their annual increases as well, and they are still raising with inflation, but they're not as flexible on those bandings now. They're keeping within that frame, even based on your year's experience. You go in at a certain salary, some bit of flex for the right candidate, but they're not going to go top over that banding for if you're one title to obviously that's more senior title.
Yeah. Do you think that sort of inflated salary package is kind of like a COVID hangover thing, when sort of that explosion happened within the industry?
Yeah, definitely. I think there was so much work coming through. They needed so many more people to come through, and it was the same in every single company. So, it was so competitive in terms of for the clients. It was a candidate-driven market completely. Candidates could be in 5 processes and interview processes, things like that. And so when it came down to clients giving offers, it was very, very competitive. Now it has sort of like more flipped, still very candidate-driven, but I am seeing that now clients are able to, make those. They're not as pressured into just throwing money at people now to obviously get people to work for them. It's more, they're focusing more on the benefits that do come with, that salary. It's not a obviously insanely high salary, but they're focusing more on, what they give them to make their life easier within that, including benefits, obviously flexible working, things like that. So I think it has, flattened out in a good way, that you're getting more benefits wise, and still that's, decent salary.
Obviously, salary is like the key thing when we're looking for a new job. Is there anything interesting or sort of surprising you when you wrote this article?
I think what just keeps popping up in my mind now as we're having this conversation is that because throughout COVID and just post-COVID, there was that huge increase in salaries skyrocketing because there was so much work obviously at that time, is that I think candidates are they understand that it's slowing down, and they know they can't get the increases they could 2-3 years ago. So I just think as long as you're flexible in the areas you can be flexible, they would be okay with it. I think everyone is in it together.
Yeah.
They know the industry more than anyone else does. And especially from what we hear from them, they're so invested in it that they know everything that's going on. And if you look at last year, loads of them would have had their friends who got laid off, especially in the biotech space where investment dropped. That it's if they were so close to that, they're not going to then, when they're looking for a new job, be well, I can definitely get X amount more than what I was already on, because half their team has just got laid off. Yeah.
We touched on it very briefly in the working from home, flexible working sort of mindset, and that's something that is a huge hangover from the pandemic, which feels so long ago now, doesn't it? It feels almost a lifetime ago.
What a weird time as well.
That was such a
now when you think about it, I'm
I got so good at Call of Duty, I got so good at FIFA over that time.
Was you on furlough?
No, so I was.
I was working all the way through. I still have nightmares.
I was an independent contractor, so I did bits and pieces here and there, but most of the time was trying to get a dub on Warzone, and that's about it, to be fair. So with the rise of flexible work and hybrid working, do you feel a lot more life sciences professionals are opting for that work-life balance? One stat that surprised me massively when I read your piece was that 30% of workers would contemplate a career move
if
a full-time return to the office was implemented. Yeah.
I do get it though, because also in a previous piece that I wrote, it was proven that productivity was a lot higher when people work a few days at home, a few days in the office. And I think also just having that work-life balance is, once that's been given to you, if that's then taken away, you feel entitled to it.
Yeah.
Because definitely. You can do the job, but you also can go and pick your kids up from school. You can, I don't know, have dinner with your family. There's just so many small things that I don't even think we realise that we took for granted, until then it becomes a conversation of actually no, you can't have that anymore.
Yeah, it's quite funny, isn't it? There was a statistic that basically said that 1/3 of life sciences employees would consider flexible working as sort of a essential criteria for accepting a new job, and would be willing to sort of take less money in their salary with the option of working more from home during the period of their contract or their personal permanent placement. Is that something you guys are seeing a lot of? Is that a demand from our life sciences professionals that we're seeing more than maybe that we had previous?
I think from my perspective, I believe that the candidates still would prefer 100% remote. However, they're open to hybrid, but they're not open to 5 days in the office. And I completely understand it, even from our own perspective. For example, right, if we're going to talk about financials, if you're working from home, let's say 3-4 days a week, you're saving income on traveling, food expenditure, all of these other bits and pieces. So you can actually think about reducing your salary if you have that element of flexibility, because you could be taking home the same amount. But then also you get the other bonuses, like you mentioned, you know, being able to pick up your kids from school, spending more time with your family. You definitely have that work-life balance, and there's more benefits that come from that. And then also you actually enjoy coming to the office as well. So I believe even rate of sickness, for example, probably has dropped. I'm not sure if you guys have looked into that. But that sick days probably have dropped, and in terms of when we come to the office, you're around people, familiar faces, you build better relationships, and you know there's a better culture within the working spaces. And from my own perspective, you know, when I'm in this environment, I believe I'm a lot more efficient and effective, because you need that buzz as well. So I think hybrid is like the perfect medium between just being at home 100% of the time and being in the office 100% of the time.
I think it can be really isolating as well, being like fully remote. That's just me though. But but I think as well, also with like hybrid and flexi working, is also just the option of having flexible hours. So if you've got something on that you like cannot avoid, you don't have to like take time off work to go and do that. If it's like, I don't know, a doctor's appointment, or like a family member's ill or something, is that you can then work your hours around that and still meet your deadlines, but just be like, I'm going to work later in the day to fit this in, or whatever it may be. You
know, we're all adults at the end of the day, if you know what I mean. I don't want to feel like I'm still in school, having to be, you know, attendance checked and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I personally believe when you have that flexibility, feel like there's an element of control, if you know what I mean, that you have yourself.
I think because that just creates like more trust between the employer and the employees, and that creates like a more conducive environment to work in, I would say.
Are you seeing the same trends with your candidates?
Yeah, I mean, lucky enough, none of them are going back to the 5-day week. There are a lot which are, you know, do want that, you know, office environment, especially say the London and Manchester offices that our clients have. You know, they're really nice offices. Some of them, you know, huge ones on the River Thames, rooftop bars, like, you know, so it's a good place to be in, and it's a good environment to be in, and they do like to make sure that it's worth coming into the office, and I think that's the key thing. It's making sure that if we are implementing these changes, it's worth your time to come into the office. But you know, like you said, on the trust, it is more about that. I do believe, like, you know, I was speaking to, you know, candidates before, and these changes are becoming, you know, mandated, and it's certain days in the office, and that's why they then choose to look somewhere else, because they do find that there's that lack of trust, that they can't, you know, be flexible with their time. They can't work around the hours if their, you know, line manager is, you know, finished for the day, and it was the fact that you had to go to a doctor's appointment and you're making up that time. They're finding that that's the issue, and as long as I think companies aren't strict on it and do have that trust, you know, you chose to work for that company in the first place, so if you've made that decision, you are going to try your best for that company, and they'll have to give that same trust back.
I think you know, just going on that, something that I came across recently, there was you know, a business that had all of their staff members working remotely, and during that time a lot of their workforce ended up moving out of London, buying a property, because they were now accustomed to working completely from home. Now all of a sudden the business has moved their office into central London, and because they've got more expenditure on this new office now, they're driving everyone to come back into the office. So they've actually lost a lot of their workforce by implementing people having to come back in, because a lot of their workforce no longer live in London. They live, you know, in Sheffield or Middlesbrough or Somerset,
where it's more financially viable to buy your first place, maybe. Now that 2023 is long gone, I can't believe we're almost in February already. It feels like January.
January's not long though.
To be fair, though, I can't wait for January to be a thing of the past. I always feel like the January hangover is intense, and it's been a particularly grey January in London and the UK as a whole. Budgets are being signed off now. we're going to have life science businesses looking for their to build out their teams and get that top level of talent in. Given the unique demands of the life sciences industries, there might not be a one-size-fits-all solution to recruitment, and that's why it's nice to have representative from our contract and interim department and our sort of permanent division as well. So it's sort of, what would you say to a client who is now looking to build out their team, looking to get in that top talent and bringing in a little bit of everything from what we talked about? What piece of advice would you give them, Kash?
Give me a phone call.
To our clients.
Call me.
Get in touch. He's good on the phones.
So what advice would I give them in terms of what building out their teams for this new year?
Yeah.
You are right, because it definitely depends in what skill sets they're looking for, but ultimately I would say you need to think outside of the box. You need to, one of the key takeaways that I will find is that these candidates, they are passionate about what they're doing and they want to be able to help people. So if they're bought into your vision and the mission of the company, and they're interested in the product and there's innovation and so on and so forth, then candidates will actually take a pay cut to be involved in something that they believe in and they know that you believe in. So I would personally say probably spend time packaging your story together in terms of what value you guys are going to be bringing to the marketplace, to be able to attract these clients that want to work for you and work on your personal brand and so on and so forth, because people will be knocking on your door.
And that's something that we can help with, right? I mean, we can be an extension of your business and help you find that. And it is finding that perfect fit. There is no one size fits all job. It is about finding the perfect person for that role, right?
But I think it's also that thing as well, as that, like, obviously, as you guys know, it's like you can tailor your solutions to that, so you don't have to hire an entire permanent team or like an entire team of contractors. It's like you can blend that for different roles depending on like how long you're going to need them, how important they are to like the overall life cycle of the project. Whereas like other things, you might just need like a specialist for a certain amount of months to just get one thing off the ground, but it's not key for like the entire process.
Yeah. What about you, Roisin? Any advice to our clients out there?
I would say one thing, it would be sort of like start as early as possible with it, whether that's yourselves, whether that's through recruiters. I think there was a few times where it might be that there was a deadline for starting, things like that, and again, going back to how long processes are taking, I don't think it was expected last year on how long process of interview processes and things were going to take. So adding that onto notice periods, they weren't getting the hires at the times that they needed them, which obviously isn't ideal for them. They're wanting either perm hires, then they might not have the budget for contracts that early in the stage, things like that. So definitely that, but also to add on to what Kash said, make it worth it for candidates. If they are looking more at company values and what you're working on, as we've said, life science, people go into this for a reason, they care about it, so they are going to choose things that they care about in terms of whether that is the therapy areas, the drugs that they're working on. A lot of the times they have something behind them that's driving them towards that as well, maybe their experience, family experience. Sure. So they are choosing more now the values of the company, what you stand by, and also the work that you're doing, so that they know where they can make that impact on themselves.
Yeah, I think one thing I'd say is just ask the question. You might not necessarily have like a robust internal recruitment team. So these guys here are experts in their fields. We at Meet, we have guys in niche verticals who are working specifically within those sort of markets. So ask the question. There's always going to be a service available to you, whether it's contract, whether it's permanent, a blend, or retained, or whatever it is. That there is something out there for you that you might not even yourselves know what that is just yet. So ask the question, and these guys will find you the perfect fit. Mm-hmm. As always, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
It's always good to get you guys on and talking about your expertise. And I know it's not the most done thing in the world is to jump in front of a camera or be on a podcast. Although I feel like we'll see a lot more Kash in the in the coming months. Roisin is essentially the face of the business now, I would say.
Definitely not.
Actually, with you hosting a bunch of stuff.
I'm way too often in front of the camera for someone who should be behind the scenes.
I was hired to be the other side. And I have no idea how this is.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, that's funny. You was hard to be behind the camera.
Glenn saw me and was like, this guy, his jawline, it needs to be in front of the camera. How are your weekends looking? You just chilling now, sort of, because we're almost done with January. This sort of like gloomy January time is almost done. We're rolling into February soon. How are you guys feeling? You finally over dry Jan? You guys been doing dry Jan? About to tick it over?
I have not, and I'm actually kind of sick of people asking me if I'm doing it. But I never drink that much in January, so it feels like a pointless month for me to do it personally.
Good point, well made, actually, yeah.
No, I've been doing it. First time I'm doing it, actually.
Yeah.
Is it?
I feel incredible.
I did like
honest.
Sober October, and that felt good. That's why I was like, January's too
It's too close in time.
I've had like a damp January, I think.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's been damp.
Mine's been damp. Yeah, which is good for me.
Thank you so much, guys. Join us next month where we have a special West Coast edition of the Effective Podcast. So keep your eyes out on that. And thank you to you guys. You're incredible. See you next time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.